Good evening. From our headquarters in Kyiv, this is a special edition of the Sunday show on Hromadske International, the only primetime TV program explaining the Eastern European geopolitical storm in English, and I'm Natalia Hromadske. And tonight we will look at the post-Soviet frozen conflict territories: South Ossetia, Abkhazia, Nagorno-Karabakh, Transnistria, and the simmering conflict of the Donbas. How the residents of these territories live, where they work, and what are their ambitions, their lifestyles, and their achievements. This is the special project, The Unrecognized, made by Russian language news exchange, done in cooperation of the Moldovan, Georgian, Azerbaijani, Armenian, Ukrainian, Russian and Belarusian independent journalists and newsrooms.
Я не вижу в 25 или 26 лет какие-то изменения. Мне кажется, что здесь кому-то вот это все состояние подходит. Ни с одного берега, ни с другого. Я не вижу никакого как бы благополучия.
Семьи разделились. Муж в одной стороне, жена в другой стороне, сваты, братья, кумовья, все, даже все поделили как ножом. Время лечит все.
У нас двойное гражданство. И мы как были с Россией, мы ей не изменяем. Она нам, пенсионерам, очень хорошо помогает. Здесь намного выгоднее, чем в Евросоюзе.
Здесь еще, как мы жили при Советском Союзе, сохраняется образ врага. Сохранилось как маленький Советский Союз.
Пусть мало заработаем здесь, но будем здесь. А для меня главное, чтобы люди остались тут. Работали тут. Если их здесь не будет, я уеду, мои ребята уедут, все уйдем отсюда. Что останется?
Что творилось с нами и творится, это полное беззаконие. То есть там законом даже, вот, знаете, не пахнет. То есть если вы хотите всех истребить на этой территории, то да, конечно, тут надо просто атомную атаку провести, и все будет тишина. Ни преступников, ни мира. А если вы хотите просто навести порядок, чтобы у вас меньше грабили, убивали, насиловали, воровали и так далее, то для этого не нужна Россия вообще. Это все делается самими, делается элементарно.
Years of diplomatic negotiations, dozens of acts and agreements, hundreds of roadmaps and redrawn borders. Behind the official procedures in conflict region live hundreds of thousands of people who depend on political decisions, perhaps more so than anyone else. Since 1991, the moment the Soviet Union collapsed, 6 out of 15 former Soviet Union countries have experienced war. We can see them. These are Russia, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and as well Tajikistan. There were formed 4 republics, unrecognized republics: Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Karabakh, and Transnistria. There, overall, they are living in these conditions for 25 years. Their overall population is around 620,000 people. Since 2014, the war in Ukraine had started, and there are way more, 3.5 million people living in the territories of the occupied Donbas. So this project is exactly to tell about the life of those people. We're starting our program on talking to a really close neighbor of Ukraine, the unrecognized Republic of Transnistria, branch free of Moldova in the early 90s, and has been locked in a so-called frozen conflict with the country since 1992, when a ceasefire ended 2 years of fighting between Russian-backed Transnistrian forces and the Moldovan army. That's what we would discuss, and we are joined by Leo Litra, the Senior Research Fellow at the New Europe Center here in Kyiv. The first, of course, I would explain that, Transnistria population officially is around 500,000 of people, which is 1/8 of the whole Moldovan population. And the third of people are Moldovans and Romanians, third Russians, and more or less respectively the rest are Ukrainians. But Leo, what we would like to start that this year there are some kind of a news of the starting renegotiation of the reconciliation. We hear some positive signs, even from the Ukrainian representative, on the negotiation over Transnistria. So what we should know?
Well, I think there have been several steps of rapprochement between the two sides, I would say. However, from my perspective, nothing serious goes on, so we have to be not skeptical but cautious in calling this real progress, because this do not touch upon the political basket, I mean the political dimension of the settlement, and this is aimed at easing the, let's say, the burden for certain people who are traveling, who are crossing the administrative line, who are having the number plates in the unrecognized territory and so on and so on. But this is also a dangerous process, basically, because allowing Transnistrian region to get all the, let's say, all the recognized elements of the state, of a state, and not which would not lead to a settlement, means that Transnistria will have the comfort of a state and will not have any responsibility for what it does.
Every day, hundreds of Moldovans take buses from Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, to Tiraspol, the capital of the so-called Transnistria. Thousands of people from both banks of the Dniester River are closely tied by family relations or working contacts. On the border, there are checkpoints where the so-called Russian peacekeepers are stationed. So we would like to show the story of Lilia Kisin, a Romanian language and literature teacher who made this journey twice a day over the period of a year. In the morning, she traveled to work in Tiraspol. In the evening, she returned to Chisinau. To make her life easier, Kisin decided to get a tourist migration card and move to Transnistria.
В 2009 году я как бы искала работу. В моем родном селе, где я работала раньше, не было вакансий на преподавателя румынского языка.
Analiză comparativă a literaturii din Basarabia și a literaturii de peste Prut, ne-am dat seama că...
Мне здесь дали 18 часов, и я как бы приезжала каждое утро. И я проспалась 5 часов, в 6 уже выходила на автобус, половина 8 уже была на работе. Таможня есть, миротворческие силы, и есть еще этот пост полиции нашей молдавской. Мы уже привыкли к этим постам. Получается, что каждый день одни и те же лица, одни и те же пограничники, одни и те же работники таможни. А когда просят каждый раз, чтобы вытаскивал этот паспорт, уже тебя нервирует. И раньше было еще более-менее с этими постами. Сейчас каждый раз ребенок даже ходит с свидетельством о рождении. Я не вижу в 25 или 26 лет какие-то изменения. Мне кажется, что здесь кому-то вот это все состояние подходит. Ни с одного берега, ни с другого. Я не вижу никакого как бы благополучия. В Молдове тоже я не вижу смысла остаться. И тем более здесь.
Which is considerably higher, as we can say, in our region, 319 euros compared to 260, though the pensions, as in many frozen conflict areas, are a bit higher. You know, we know that these governments are usually supported by Russia. I'm speaking about a lot of other frozen conflicts.
Russia funded Transnistria directly with funding top-up for pensions, with supplying gas for free. So the local authorities in Transnistria collected this money but did not pay for this gas actually, and officially the debt is considered as being the Moldovan one. So they consume the gas but they don't pay for this and they get this money, so it's indirect funding. And also the third, I mean the real part of economy is not, which is not connected to Russian sponsorship, is the export. The one which is left in the region, and the export in the region is actually many would be surprised, but the biggest part of its share goes to European Union states and Moldova.
In fact, there is an opportunity to get the EU passport. There is a chance to get the passport of Romanian passports. To what extent that influences on the life of and the way the Transnistrian population really communicate and live in Moldova?
Well, actually, most of the people from the region go to Russia because this is much easier. I mean, they have access to Russian passports. I mean, they receive Russian passports. An average person in Transnistria region has several passports. Russian one, Moldovan one, maybe Romanian one, Transnistrian, of course. It's useless, but they have it. So most of them go to Russia because this is more convenient. They know the language, they know the culture in a way. Some of them go to the West and they use the Moldovan passport. Very few use the Romanian passport because one needs to prove that it has Romanian ancestors. But since the visa-free, I mean, in April it's been 4 years since Moldova is enjoying visa-free with the EU, there was a high demand from the side of inhabitants living in the Transnistrian region for Moldovan passports. So they socialize better, they travel more.
I would say the free trade agreement between Moldova and the European Union has been in effect since 2016. Since then, Transnistria isn't officially recognized by the international community. Regional enterprises have to register their business interests now and export their goods with the label Made in Moldova. However, between Moldova and the unrecognized republic, private trade is conducted without any formalities, so businessman Yuri Kotsafan fought for the unity of Moldova in 1992. His village Korjova is in Transnistria, while his farm is located in the village of Kochieri, right beyond the checkpoint in the territory controlled by the Moldovan authorities. Kotsavan's products are purchased on both sides of the border.
Мы находимся в селе Кучера. Это село, которое отстояли в 92 году.
Сколько километров отделяет Коржево от вот этого?
От Кучера?
Да.
10 метров.
10 метров.
Мы же проезжали пост, это и есть граница. Взяли, он заштукатурили, побелили, протянули воду, отопление тянем сейчас. Это вешенка. Ну, сейчас готовим под шампиньоны вот эта часть. Я только весной начал. Но есть 2 человека, которые работают на подхвате, когда надо. А здесь сам. Понюхайте. Приехал, допустим, в школу у меня после работы. Девушка кто желает. Вы видели, у меня в машине весы. Их надо в каждый день вырывать, а если не вырву, они пропадают. Первый урожай, когда идет, здесь как на соснах снег, белый, мешков не видно. Все мешки должны быть, да? Вот видите, на одном сколько. Потому что уже мы 3 урожая уже сняли, это уже на исходе. Семьи разделились. Муж в одной стороне, жена в другой стороне, сваты, братья, кумовья, все. Это же все поделили как ножом. По форме хожу по городу. Не один раз ходил.
Ну не страшно вот ходить так?
Нет, не страшно. Я говорю, у меня уже страх уже улетучился еще в 95-м. У меня здесь родился прапрадед, прадед, дед. Я здесь рос. У меня нету гражданства в Приднестровье, нету паспорта. У меня одно гражданство. Я гражданин Республики Молдова. 2 раза в месяц приезжает милиция, проверяет паспорт.
Что это за ощущение, когда, по сути, вас сделали иностранцем в собственной стране?
Ну, какое ощущение? Душить хочется. Но пока есть силы воздерживаться.
Вы смогли сами простить вот своим там соседям, возможно, односельчанам, которые выступали за Россию, что теперь вот это все произошло?
Да уже простили, в принципе. Время лечит все.
So one of the men Hromadske had spoken there said that the time is healing everything.
I think that since the ceasefire agreement in 92, I mean, people had opportunity to travel, to cross the administrative line, and to understand that this conflict has nothing to do with the ordinary people. ordinary people at the local level don't have any conflict. I mean, they have the same vision, I mean, on many, many issues. The only maybe vision which divides them is that people in Moldova are more likely to have a greater propensity towards the European Union.
And the recent conflict, the Russian-Ukrainian war, to what extent it also, influences the resolution of the conflict in a way, because anxiety is on there. It was on there, especially within the first years of conflict, when a lot of people were expecting, let's say, in Odessa, that there would be Russian troops coming from Transnistria.
I mean, of course, Transnistria has a role now because Ukraine is under Russian aggression in Ukraine. Ukraine has additional pressure from the southwest of Ukraine. So basically, there is two types of Russian troops in Transnistrian region. One is the Russian peacekeepers, which are residing legally there under the 92 agreement, while the second part is these illegal troops, which are de jure, I would say, defending the weapons, Russian weapons there, which are the leftovers from the Russian 14 Army, Soviet 14 Army, while de facto they participate to the state building of Transnistria.
But in general, what can Ukraine, a big country, way bigger country than Moldova, and can do?
Of course, Ukraine is very important because the Transnistria region is landlocked between Moldova and Ukraine. And this is important since Tiraspol administration will be able to do anything only with the acceptance of Moldova and Ukraine. And Ukraine is now very cooperative on having this joint control of the border at the perimeter of Transnistria, border, I mean, between Moldova and Ukraine, on the perimeter of Transnistria. Ukraine can also support the Moldovan intention to change the peacekeeping mission into a multinational peacekeeping mission with an international mandate, which is not taking place these days. And Ukraine is actually supportive on this, but we know there is a veto power, which is called Russia, and things don't happen.
As well, I would remind that you are watching the special edition of the Sunday show devoted to the unrecognized, a joint project of independent newsrooms working in the region for the Russian language news exchange. You can explore all the stories on the Hromadske international webpage en.hromadske.ua. The population of South Ossetia is 53,000 people, the size of an average town. The conflict between Georgian and Russian-backed breakaway region began in late 1980s when Georgian oppositionists demanded Georgia's withdrawal from the USSR. In response, there were calls from South Ossetia to split from Georgia. This Georgian territory had become a place where the current Russian government started to test the limits of what they can do on foreign soil. In August 2008, what we know as a 5-day war broke out between Russia and Georgia. We have with us Sasha Delemenchuk, who is an expert of the Eastern Partnership Minorities Network, a human rights defender with considerable experience in the Caucasus. But before we start the discussion, we'll watch the report we have brought from South Ossetia. So the South Ossetian budget is almost completely made up of subsidies from Russia. The Ossetian government is the main employee across the republic. Ossetia also has its peculiarities in logistics. The only transport connection to the outside world is mountain road through the main Caucasian range, which connects the republic with North Ossetia, which is a part of Russia.
Я в Дявском районе около 500 тысяч рублей взял кредит, и вот с этого начал работать. Потом еще Министерство экономики оказало помощь. Свояк моего брата, мы с ними здесь начали бассейн строить. Ну, работали в бассейне, землю выкидывали наверх, и асфальт в прошлом году положили. Но здесь тягач на площадке, на платформе тянул этого экскаватора в сторону Квайса. Ну, в ту сторону, куда везли, не знаю. И когда мы увидели эту технику, что забирают его, кто-то что-то будет строить, мы так обрадовались, уже окрыленные, мы друг на друга переглянули, и я говорю, наверное, в Осетии люди будут жить, и нам тоже лучше и легче будет. Он тоже, я говорю, как раз тоже об этом подумал. Да, и еще с большей энергией начали работать. В республике было два хозяйства. Один в Цхинвалском районе, второй я построил. Но в Осетии самая вкусная рыба у меня. И все приходили ко мне, покупали его. И тем более была новая, всем было интересно. Но эта рыба деликатесная, дорогая рыба. А у нашего населения покупательной способности нет. Зарплаты у них низкие. И если с Грузией граница будет открыта, и я смогу сам закупать в Грузии или в Турции это корм для рыбы, тогда моя продукция будет конкурентоспособной. А если откроют его, и я не смогу его закупить в Грузии, а опять через посредника, это для меня, конечно, хуже, чем... Лучше пусть границы будут закрытыми, чтобы его не завозили. И рыбу не завозили, и корм, чтобы я как-то выживал. И у нас есть вот линия мимо меня проходит, но ветхая линия в селах. Вот в Шихантур электричество пропустили, столбов нет, и провода по деревьям они пропустили. И ветер, или снег, и дождь уже замыкание его отключают. Постоянно его ремонтируют. Зимой ветер, все, света нет. И если у меня рыбы будет, и вот эта система будет работать на государственной энергии, его отключают. И максимум полчаса, и уже у меня рыба погибла. Потому что сейчас, если в бассейне я буду держать, допустим, 300 килограмм, они свободно будут. И кислорода достаточно, и все. А при этой системе уже не 300 килограмм, а 900 килограмм можно содержать. И у меня 900 килограмм в бассейне, электричества нет, кислорода нет, и рыба вся погибла. Все. И чтобы со мной этого не случилось, я потихонечку готовлю себе генератор. Здесь внизу бассейн. Хочу сделать этот водный аттракцион. В республике наши дети, они что, хуже других? Почему у нас горе одни в Осетии? Почему у нас нет аттракциона? И когда будет водный аттракцион? Дети летом не будут приезжать и отдыхать. А ребенку что надо? Чтобы родители его любили, что-то ему показали, какие-то материальные блага и что-то. Если дети наши не будут развиваться, будущее у них никогда не будет.
Sasha, we see that a lot of people living in the zones of the frozen conflicts are complaining, first of all, about the economic situation. But what are the most important issues if you look at that as a human rights defender? And to what extent, in fact, Georgia can... it depends on Georgia.
Would it be here in Ukraine, in Georgia, in Azerbaijan or Moldova? The problem is that international organizations do not recognize these territories as separate states or separate units. And that means that they cannot enter into human rights conventions, for example, UN conventions or European human rights conventions. And this means that it leaves these territories without efficient international mechanisms for human rights protection. And usually these international mechanisms are being applied whether through country to which these breakaway regions belong according to international law, or through the countries, or in our region it's mainly one country which exercises efficient control over these territories and backs de facto governments. But yeah.
So what would be the issues, first of all, if we speak about, let's say, in particular South Ossetia? It's a small territory.
Yeah, issues are the same. It's police brutality, it's problems with independent judiciary, it's problems with freedom of speech. Tamara Merakishvili, she's a prominent South Ossetian human rights activist and journalist. There was 2 criminal cases against her, initiated against her because of her criticism of local authorities in South Ossetia. Just these days, she won one of the cases in the Supreme Court, but the second criminal case is still open against her. So the problems in human rights fields which are being experienced by population of South Ossetia or other breakaway regions are very similar to the problems which are being faced by citizens here in Ukraine or in Georgia, but the problem is that they don't have efficient international protection.
If you speak about the excess of what the Georgian citizens have to what their government can do for them. For instance, in Ukraine, the human rights activists sometimes would say that, for instance, the people who live in the occupied territories of the Donbas don't enjoy the full sense of full spectrum of what the Ukrainian citizens do. So in that regard, how Georgia deals with its population in this territory?
Georgia unfortunately started this sad way, this tragical way, very long ago, approximately from the 90s, approximately from the start of its independence. So in their policy towards occupied territories, there were several stages, let's say. One of the stages was very similar to what we have now in state policies in Ukraine, that Ukrainian government should not be responsible for anything because there is Russia, which occupied our territory, so we don't care who will be paying pensions, who will be paying different kind of social payments there. In Georgia now, this approach evaluated, and it's more human-oriented. So Georgian Ministry on Occupied Territories all the time proclaims that these people are our citizens, and it's our job to take care of them. But again, of course, there is a lot of other kind of the problems, especially the fact that Georgian authorities do not have physical access to these territories.
And if about the peacekeeping operation, there are also a lot of discussion today about the peacekeeping operation in the Ukrainian Donbas. What is the situation with, what are the lessons learned from having the peacekeeping operation in the frozen conflicts in post-Soviet countries?
I think that the first and outmost lesson is that it should be really independent international contingent of peacekeepers, because I was in 2008, immediately after the 5 days war, there on the borderline between South Ossetia and the de facto borderline between South Ossetia and Georgia, and it was controlled by Russian militaries. And we managed to talk a bit with some of them, very young soldiers. By the way, they were drafted soldiers, and it's prohibited, according to the legislation of Russian Federation, to send drafted soldiers outside of Russian territory. But anyway, and we had a small talk with them, and this young guy said that, yes, they brought us from some region in Russia, I don't remember, and they made us to sew these chevrons with the word peacekeeper to our uniform during the night very quickly, but in reality they were just ordinary drafted soldiers from Russia. So, I mean, you cannot trust to such kind of peacekeeping contingent which is being revealed by representative of only one country, and this country has its concrete interest in the conflict.
So also, let's take a look at the graphs showing the employment sector in South Ossetia. How much do people earn in the region? And these are the figures for average wage, living wage, and minimum pensions. As well, we can go to the employment sectors. So we have see that 70% of the people are are earning their money from the public sector, 6%, just 6% from the industries. That sometimes it's forgotten how small South Ossetia are.
The number of people who would benefit from the opportunity to travel to Tbilisi, to Georgia proper, or to get some medical help or education here. Because the question is still here in the field. It is the initiative going only from one direction to another, and there is no support actually to the initiatives in the whole society, not only by the governments of the Abkhazia and South Ossetia republics, but also in the society itself. So it looks like people have an opportunity to be cured here or to get education. It happens really rare. But they kind of ashamed to do it. They can't say even to their relatives or to their neighbors that they are traveling to Georgia to get some medical help, for instance.
And Margarita, of course, because of the very recent the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, there are more, interest into the frozen conflicts in the region. But as well, there were more and more talks about the possible secession of South Ossetia by Russia. You know, there was those rumors, there were those talks. So what is really going on?
Unfortunately, it's really a problem which is recognized, fully recognized in Abkhazia itself, and not so much recognized in South Ossetia, because both of the regions, they have different aspirations. Because in Abkhazia, the government and the society, they are united with the idea of being independent state. And they are, at least it is declared, and the majority of people would answer if somebody asks them how you see your future in nearest or further in the several years, they would say independent state. And just absolutely the opposite situation in South Ossetia, because the majority of people there, and it's not only my opinion, but it is supported by referendum which was conducted just less than a year ago. And so whether you would like to join Russia and live as a part of Russia, and majority of people would say yes. So just the opposite as it happens in Abkhazia. It is about what people think in the society, how they feel themselves in regard to Russia. And if we talk about what really happens in the republics, in economical sphere, in politics, in just in the life of the societies, I have to support the idea that a lot of Russian influence is there, and so not much left for the governments, especially in South Ossetia, but also it's true for Abkhazia as well. So not much left for the society, for the local governments, for just people to even to decide. And in Abkhazia, the society recognizes this as a problem. There are roundtables discussing the problem, and discussions in Facebook, in different social networks. And again, because the attitude of the society in South Ossetia is different, so not big discussion over it.
And Margarita, there is also the belief if the economic situation is getting better, if the mainland is becoming richer, then the people in the breakaway regions would look at that territory and would consider that, okay, it could have been better not to be separated. Is it really the case? To what extent that has an impact? You know, the fact that, Georgia has a visa-free regime, that wherever we say about the inner politics of Georgia, there are still reforms, and Georgian economy is little by little, but by getting better. To what extent it influences the public opinion in those regions?
I can say that I feel that there is better if Abkhazia had the same opportunities, but it is better to be hungry and to be with Russia rather than be back to Georgia, even if Georgia has more opportunities in future and can even become part of Europe and has now free visa regime with Europe. So it doesn't help because it's not enough. Because when the conflict is still here, when there are some arguments that need to be resolved, and in terms of political resolution of the conflict, of transformation of the conflict, then I would say that usually if people would be happy with improvement of their lives and it would be only what they wanted, then the conflict resolution would happen earlier.
So another breakaway Georgian territory of Abkhazia is considerably bigger than South Ossetia. It has a bit less than 250,000 people. Its population is made up of Abkhazians, 50% Georgians, around 20% Armenians and Russians. It's a seaside territory which used to be a famous Soviet resort. The increase in crime is one of the main issues in Abkhazia at the moment. No one here knows how to deal with this. However, as always, there have been proposals to allocate more funds and human resources. Entrepreneur Anna Kalyagina thinks that overall the crime situation in Abkhazia isn't quite a catastrophe, but it does have a negative influence on business. Let's take a look at what she had to say.
Любой бизнес, он подразумевает какие-то определенные составляющие, которые могут повлиять на твою опасность или безопасность. Ну, например, безопасность твоих денежных средств, которые могут экспроприировать. Но я здесь, наверное, сравню с туристами. Вот когда к нам приезжают туристы, мы говорим определенные заготовленные слова о безопасности на территории Республики Абхазия. Это не значит, что здесь сильно опасно. Есть туристические страны, в которых намного опаснее пребывание туристов. И такая памятка, она дает туристу знание о том, что все-таки нужно быть начеку, да? Криминогенная обстановка, особенно в последнее время, она, конечно, очень напрягает всех, и бизнесменов, и туристов, и обычных людей. Криминогенная обстановка и повышение вот этого состояния, то, что ты не чувствуешь этой безопасности, конечно, она влияет отрицательно на все. И на бизнес это влияет, и на то же самое на поступление инвестиций в Республику Абхазия, и на тех же самых туристов. Очень многие бизнесмены российские, например, они просто развернулись и уехали, потому что они не знали, что ждать в дальнейшем. То есть такие ситуации тоже бывают. У нас вот ограбили, например, велопрокат. Человек собрался и уехал. Криминал, он вообще всегда мешает экономическому росту в странах, в любых, а в Абхазии в частности. Вопрос на самом деле очень такой глубокий, потому что борьба с преступностью, она должна происходить постоянно, и она должна быть практически непрекращаема.
Sasha, there is a bit of a dilemma because we see that, as a human rights defenders, of course, you still can help the people who are suffering from all the criminal cases, but in the end, we see that it's not exactly the political issue. So, what can be done with this regard? You can't strengthen the local police because it's also kind of the occupying authorities, wherever you call them.
Development organizations who has access to such territories, they should also raise capacities of local police, because if we raise their capacities, they would become, in their operations, they would become closer to some kind of civilized actions, yeah? And it will be more beneficial for local population. So for human rights defenders, not the issue of territorial integrity or some political recognitions is on the first place, but the rights of local residents, rights of local population.
Would it be considered a legitimization of...
No, I don't consider this a legitimization if it's done through appropriate international bodies such as UN, OSCE, Council of Europe, and etc.
The Russian businessman Igor Varov has worked in Abkhazia for 13 years and survived several assassination attempts. He says that the most of the crimes in Abkhazia don't even get registered. And in Varov's opinion, the Joint Information and Coordination Center for combating crime set up by Russia and Abkhazia together is not likely to help in this.
Главное – это слабость власти. Именно слабость власти. Почему? Потому что, душа, если преступление совершается на протяжении не 5 секунд, как там, как говорится, кого-то убивают, там рубят топором или еще что-то, а на протяжении длительного времени, изо дня в день совершается преступление, никто на него не реагирует, значит, слабость власти. То, что творилось с нами и творится, это полное беззаконие. То есть там законом даже, знаете, не пахнет. Есть обычная страна, которая рядом, в которой почему-то в короткие сроки было решено проблему с коррупцией, с взятками, с преступностью, где воры в законе были признаны само ношение звания преступника, и все, и проблема решилась сама по себе, понимаете? То есть просто исполнять закон нужно. За вот этими различными фамильными сложностями, да, чаще всего скрывается, не чаще всего, практически везде, скрывается, именно пытаются скрыть трусость свою. То есть боятся возбудить уголовное дело, а вдруг придут потом и скажут ай-яй-яй, там мне, да, и боятся кого-то задержать. КЦ это больше технический центр, как бы он в какой-то поможет, пока опера будут бегать от преступников, а не за преступниками. Какой тут, хоть 3 КЦ построй, понимаете, тут в конце концов нужно поменять, кто за кем бегает, понимаете, то ли заяц за охотником, то ли охотник за зайцем, понимаете, на ловца и зверь бежит, а у нас получается так, звери бегут за ловцами. Пока люди считают, что кому-то это дозволено, а кому-то нет, это и есть, так скажем, подход таких двойных стандартов. Все зависит, как вы ее хотите решить, до какого состояния. То есть, если вы хотите всех истребить на этой территории, то да, конечно, тут надо просто атомную атаку провести, и все будет тишина, ни преступников, ни мира. А если вы хотите просто навести порядок, чтобы у вас меньше грабили, убивали, насиловали, воровали и так далее, то для этого не нужна Россия вообще. Это все делается самими, делается элементарно. В какой части прибегнуть к России? Что, танки, что ли, использовать против своего народа? Это ненормально. А что использовать? ОМОН в масках загонять оттуда и бороться с преступностью? А что тогда местные будут делать, милиционеры-то? Я знаю, среди них много порядочных ребят, но я знаю очень достаточное количество всяких трусов, которые там берут на взятки, еще прочее. Я знаю. Там даже есть наркоманы и так далее. Это не важно. Важно в том, что оттуда нужно определить, какую помощь-то, если брать оттуда. Если брать силовую поддержку, то, может быть, это в чем-то и поможет, да. Это не поможет кардинально решить вопрос преступности. Здесь сознание, само сознание самих людей. То есть люди должны понимать, что я пришел на службу, я одел погоны, значит, я человек, который пришел сюда защищать людей, граждан. А если я пришел сюда и стою, извините меня, как оплеванный, когда мимо на скорости 100 километров меня проезжает какой-то там ора, машет, я ему там свищу, кричу палочкой и прочее, он подъезжает, еще показывает какой-нибудь там пальчик такой, и все утираются, стоят, а он дальше поехал. Что народ-то смешит?
Besides exploring the unrecognized project, check our early reporting from South Ossetia, live through the barbed wire, as well special reports from Abkhazia. That you can find on the special project part of our webpage. We are all following the events in Armenia, where protests against the country's corrupt government have been ongoing for nearly a month and have led to the resignation of the Prime Minister. Of course, while Nagorno-Karabakh is not an issue for the protesters, it's a critical factor for Armenian geopolitics, as clashes still take place on Azerbaijani-Armenian border. After 1991-1994 war, 99% of the population of this territory, which according to the international law belong to Azerbaijan, are ethnic Armenians. There are are 150,000 people living in the region. Karabakh's economy has suffered significantly from 1990s war. Now most of the profit comes from mining investments from Armenia and from the Karabakh diaspora in different countries. Diaspora's money pay for road works, new children's hospitals and hotels. People drive up to Nagorno-Karabakh using mountain road circles and bring food and petrol. The distance between Yerevan and Stepankert is 321 kilometers and takes 6 hours to drive. This, of course, has an impact on prices. Armen Hacharyan delivers food from Yerevan to all Karabakh regions. He says that any business can grow, but the question is at what expense.
С 2010 года мы привозим продукты питания, кондитерку, мороженое из Армении, из города Еревана, в город Степанакерт. Здесь у нас сборный пункт, как бы отсюда развозится по всем регионам Карабаха. Дорога не маленькая, 320 километров. Товар получаем раз в неделю, так как в основном в Карабахе все привозится из Армении, из других стран, поскольку здесь производство так особо не существует. В основном все, что связано с едой, практически все привозится из Армении. И поскольку дорога не маленькая, все это отражается на цене, на себестоимости. Машины каждый день ездят по этим дорогам, их надо обслуживать, это тоже. Как бы считается, что Карабах это отдельное государство, естественно, у него есть своя таможенная служба, которая налоги облагаются, то есть товар, который привозится с Армении, еще один раз облагается налогом. Поскольку у нас единственная дорога, по которой перевозятся товары, это Ереван-Степанакерт, осуществляется перевозка только автомобилями. Хотелось бы иметь альтернативу перевозки, то есть иметь железнодорожный вокзал или хотя бы открылся наш аэропорт, чтобы перевозка осуществлять и количеством, и времени, чтобы на это не уходило больше. Перспектива в любой сфере перспектива существует. Поскольку если я в этом возрасте занимаюсь бизнесом, то это получается, что здесь можно заниматься чем-то и добиться чего-то. Но только вопрос в том, сколько надо приложить усилия в этом регионе, чтобы добиться определенной цели, и сколько надо усилия вложить в любом другом, где население больше, где все способствует твоему развитию. Здесь развиваться очень трудно, но тем не менее существует такой вариант развития.
And we also can see that the average wage is slightly higher and the living wage is more or less, let's say, okay to that territory. But Karabakh is in this regard a bit different from South Ossetia and Abkhazia because it's really under control of Armenia. And now we are looking at all the events which are happening in Armenia. So what is your opinion? Where we have to look? How it can impact the situation of the people there?
I think that unfortunately Karabakh for a long time was kind of factor which was widely used by both governments of Armenia and is still used by government of Azerbaijan, and I don't know, maybe it will be used again by new government of Armenia for kind of excuse for any human rights violations, for economic problems, for corruption, for whatever. Because we are at war, we need to protect our people, or we need, as they say in Armenia, or return our territories, as they say in Azerbaijan. So it's kind of constant instrument political elites in both countries use. And again, in light of some of opinions of experts that And the fact that the name of the Nikol Pashinyan's party is YELK, which means exit, which means exit from this Eurasian economic space and further integration towards European Union. So it raises concerns that new Armenian government would need to be more sharp with Russia, while Russia is kind of guarantor of current situation with Karabakh, because Azerbaijan has a very big army and Azerbaijan has a very good allies in Turkey. And so Armenia also needs some bigger country who can back it in case if open conflict breaks again.
Also, we would like again to ask for an opinion of Margarita Akhvelidiani, who is an editor-in-chief of the JM News, a unique platform which following the situation in the whole Caucasus, in particular on the actual development in Armenia and in its impact to Nagorno-Karabakh.
I don't think that it is in any terms that it is a point of that is discussed now or somehow is in the plate in Armenia in the events that are happening in Armenia now. Because it is absolutely about changing of power within Armenia, and Karabakh is just absolutely somehow not related to it. But Karabakh is definitely the idea that needs to be discussed and to be especially careful now, because the conflict is not resolved and actually is it kind of even hot phase, I would say. And Azerbaijan would look, there were some announcement and declaration even by officials, but also by expert society, that it's good time which can be used for the gain of Azerbaijan, because the society is divided, because there is kind of revolution and people are divided into two parties that don't trust each other. And so to gain in this situation, it's easy. We can just go with our military forces to Karabakh and would own it after that. But I don't think so. If somebody would ask me, that it would be such big mistake if somebody would try to do it, because definitely not Karabakh divides people in Armenia, and Karabakh is exactly what would unite immediately, would unite opposition and government, just any forces in Armenia, because fortunately or unfortunately, but the society has the only opinion in Armenia. There are not, maybe like few people would have different opinion. Karabakh belongs to Armenians and must be ruled by Armenians, and nobody is going to discuss it. But definitely, when we are talking about events in Armenia, just repeating, Karabakh has nothing to do with it, and is not even mentioned within the events within Armenia itself.
Thanks a lot, Margarita, for your input.
I don't know. I don't have a ready answer for it, but I know that people, many human rights defenders and independent journalists in Azerbaijan, they were cheering development of events in Armenia with hope maybe that it will somehow also promote some changes in Azerbaijan, and maybe that in future, there is such saying that democracies do not go to war with each other. So let's hope that in future, if we would have democratic Armenia and democratic Azerbaijan, they would find the ways to make peaceful negotiations.
Sasha, thanks a lot for your analysis, and we'll watch our story, as the military conflict in Karabakh is still very much active. People live in constant fear of another escalation. Most of Karabakh's budget is directed at the army. One might think that most people would want to emigrate in such conditions, but that's not the case. Entrepreneur Eric Bagrian opened a soft drink factory in Martakert. The problems with global market penetration do not worry him. Making profits isn't his priority. The main thing is that people have jobs and stay in Karabakh, because if everyone leaves, who will stay?
У меня здесь работает 16 людей. Самое главное достижение для меня то, что люди работают. А если у них работы не будет, они не будут здесь жить. Уедут в Белоруссию, Москву, Украину, не знаю, уедут. А для меня главное, чтобы люди остались тут, работали тут. Если их здесь не будет, я уеду, мои ребята уедут, все уйдем отсюда. Что останется? Кто тут останется? Зачем тогда нам Родина? Зачем воевать? Зачем пацанов потерять? Зачем? Смысла нету. Ничего, пусть мало заработаем здесь, но будем здесь. Нам ничего там сверхъестественного не надо. Миллионы, миллиарды нам не надо. Нам надо семью держать. Все вот это самое главное. Я не бизнесмен. Я простой человек, как и мои друзья. Работаем, семью держим. Это не много денег цел. Цель в том, чтобы родине быть, заработать, жить. Не знаю. Для нас самое главное это наш товар, страна, в НКР это раздаем. Мы можем Россию отправить. Но сейчас мы так развились, чтобы смогли туда отправить. А отправить в Россию товар это несложно. Все вопрос времени и деньгах. Сейчас правильно, у нас нет много денег. Сейчас мы работаем, маленькая республика, денег не очень так много, еле-еле работаем. Если завтра признают нас как республика, будет хорошо, это естественно. Будет легко и Беларуси поставлять товар и в Москву, и в других странах. В этом году я все документы уже сделал через нашу фирму. У меня в Ереване там филиал есть. Буду поставлять в Москву. Не знаю, будет хорошо, будет плохо. Там в Москве на рынке не ждут меня. Попробую все-таки. Получится, не получится, что делать. Два армянские государства, я не так буду говорить. У нас один государство. Мы армяне, один государство. У нас статус другой, туда, это политика, я не знаю, мне не интересно. Что есть, поддержка есть. У нас нет таких денег, чтобы мы дорогу строили, дома строили, не знаю, там бизнес строили, а Ереван и диаспора нам помогает деньгами. Апрельская война нам всем убедил, что у нас есть очень сильная диаспора.
Interest in frozen conflicts and disputed territories in post-Soviet spaces resumed after the events of 2014, the annexation of Crimea by Russia and the subsequent Russian hostilities in the east of Ukraine. The Minsk ceasefire agreements of February 2015 are still violated constantly along the so-called contact line. But we should remember that around 3.5 million people reside in the non-government control areas of the Donbas, which the separatists call DPR, Donetsk People's Republic, and LPR, Luhansk People's Republic. The actual population is larger, as many residents are registered as internally displaced persons to receive social payments from Ukraine. Donbas is the most urbanized industrial region in the world affected by conflict. 28% of the population is industrial workers. That's 2.5 times more than in any other region of Ukraine. Also, we should understand that so-called DPR and LPR occupied 3% of Ukraine's territory. Earlier, we spoke with Natalia Mirimanova, a conflict analyst who have done a unique research, conducted dozens of anonymous interviews, recorded on the uncontrolled territories, in particular on the economic situation in the region, and how the Russian-Ukrainian war has affected the Donbas economy.
I looked into business from Donbas and Luhansk state, and they left. So what I can say that from the very beginning, like in the first chaotic months of the crisis, of the military escalation, business was trying to figure out what was going on. The business was not an active political actor on neither side, I would say. So business people who had something to lose, assets, and clients and money and capital and finances, especially after the bank transactions became impossible, they left. So I would say that medium and slightly upper medium business group, they left to the government-controlled territories or to Russia, much less to Russia, I would say. Those who had their equipment, their factories, their workshops, their buildings, real estate, they were caught in a truly difficult situation because this was all that they had, so to speak, and they could not transport, they could not disassemble their equipment and take it to a safer place, so to speak. So in the end, some decided to abandon all their business. Some decided to re-register it with someone who stayed there. Some other businesses left their businesses to their parents, to their relatives, etc., to wait and see. For the majority of business companies, small and medium, that I interviewed on the side of non-government controlled territories, they stayed simply because they couldn't leave, right? Because stories of IDP entrepreneurs were not all that rosy and successful either. Few, I would say, very few stayed because of ideological convictions. Overall, business in Donbass, people whom I spoke to, are rather apolitical. What they care about is transparency, is clear rules, possibility to do business, to keep connections, etc. All were very much upset about the blockade, and I refer to the blockade introduced early on in the conflict and not the recent official blockade. Ban on commercial transactions and on taking cargo across the line of contact, except the list of the enterprises whose raw materials were of key importance for strategic industry in Ukraine.
And you also write that there are some moral and ethical dilemmas for the people who are willing to do business, especially those based in the occupied territories of the Donbass. What are these dilemmas and to what extent they are influencing?
I spoke to individuals, quite many, and their stories were quite typical. By and large, in Donetsk, they do not have loyalty to the local authorities or de facto authorities, so to speak. They do have loyalty to their place. So they felt they could not abandon it because, if they leave, what would happen to Donetsk? In Luhansk, this local patriotism, so to speak, is as strong. However, in Luhansk, what we can see today, they're drifting further and further away from Kiev, much further than Donetsk, and they somehow grew to believe in the future of their republic. At least they refer to our young republic, we will do whatever. In terms of the affinity to Kiev, it's a problem for all. Because they felt that they were abandoned. I mean, it's a very common narrative that they waited that somehow this conflict will be resolved very soon, very quickly, But then they saw that Kiev was not, in their opinion, was not very much motivated to resolve it quickly, and instead it's a long-lasting war. Now low intensity, but who knows whether it can escalate. So these people found themselves between a rock and a hard place, so to speak.
And what is their willingness to go on cooperation with the rest of Ukraine, and as well, to what extent the Ukrainian goods and everything is substituted? By what is substituted? What kind of job those people have?
Well, in early months and a couple of years right after 2014. Irrespective of the ban, thanks to ubiquitous corruption, goods were going back and forth, right? and Ukrainian goods were common in supermarkets and other places in the NGC, non-government-controlled areas. However, it was becoming more and more increasingly risky business because crossing a line of contact was never risk-free, so to speak. And although people sort of knew about the so-called tariffs that they had to pay at checkpoints, on both sides, by the way, the rules may have changed, right? So this created a sense of insecurity. So that's why what my first study showed in 2015, entrepreneurs in Luhansk, Donetsk, very reluctantly, but quite quickly, reorientated towards Russian supplies. They would all say that the minute the situation normalizes and things become as they used to be, they would immediately restore business relations with Ukrainian partners because they still preferred Ukrainian goods and Ukrainian services to the Russian ones, of course. Now, what happened now in 2016? In Donetsk, businesses are still quite happy to trade with the rest of Ukraine or Ukrainian partners, Ukrainian companies. In Luhansk, the process seems to go, I wouldn't say irreversible, but quite far from the departure point, and the narrative became that we cannot trust the quality of Ukrainian products, we cannot trust Ukrainian partners, etc. So we prefer Russian supplies. So that's, this is what blockade and isolation normally does to human relations. Because business is an important, not only economically, but also in terms of people's interaction, right? And combating myths and stereotypes.
How about the big business? And also, we knew that Donbass is a heavily industrialized place. So it can't be compared to South Ossetia or Transnistria or any other this kind of frozen conflict republic in post-Soviet space. Because those are the smaller territories. Somewhere there are more, let's say, agricultural places. That was a heavy industry. It requires really, this region lives from the big contracts, import, export. It's not that a couple of people can do that. And it requires some of the legality. To what extent, generally the whole shape of the way the region is financed had changed, and also what is the role of the oligarchs? What's happening with their business, of those who actually own the region?
Right question. Well, Donbass, Donetsk and Luhansk, they were net exporters as opposed to other regions of Ukraine. So they were the major exporters of coal, of steel, and other stuff, and the source of hard currency that was coming into Ukraine, by the way. In order to export, one needs legality, right? One needs a certificate of origin, etc. Therefore, for enterprises to continue their export, they had to retain their Ukrainian registration. That was not easy, as you can understand, and some just preferred just to close their enterprises. Some others opened, companies in Russia. Very few, but still, there were companies like that, companies in Russia, and were exporting through the new Russian companies. But the majority of big mines and metal, steel production under Rinat Akhmetov, for instance, they retained they changed their registration from Donetsk to Kramatorsk, for example, in the government-controlled territories, and continued export in a legal way. Again, because there was an exception, they were exempt from the ban on commercial cargo activities, right? So they were allowed to take their coal out and to take steel in, or the other way around, right? So this interesting scheme was functioning until March 2017, when first it was a spontaneous blockade by some individuals and battalions, and then it was nationalization, so to speak, or external management introduced to these big companies, and then there was an official decree of the president, right, about the official blockade. So now these assets are lost, and it's not very clear whether they operate. Some of them do, but clearly the volume of production is much less. simply because even keeping afloat these huge enterprises requires a lot of money. There were attempts on behalf of the de factos to come and make some mines and factories to pay taxes in the so-called republics, which they refused to do because they need clean reputation in order to be exporters, right? Besides, they had all this huge staff, miners and workers who were paid on their Ukrainian accounts, right? So now it's very unclear what's going on in terms of how operational are the mines and enterprises. Some mines are flooded, so it's a very sad story. What I know from what I heard, that coal goes via Russian ports to Turkey and to other places, or even returns to Ukraine as a Russian coal via an official Ukrainian-Russian border.
Thank you from the entire team of Hromadske International for watching. I remind you may watch full versions of our interviews and unique reports from unrecognized republics and explore information prepared for you by the team of the independent journalists from the region on our webpage en.hromadske.ua. Go to special projects, find the unrecognized. While I also encourage you to sign up for our brand new newsletter and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We are there 24/7 for you. And with this, I say you goodbye.